Hello everyone, this is Anthony from One Cut Studio. This series seeks to compare the rule set and changes between the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons and the newer 2024 edition. As a DM, my party and I have been using 5th edition for a long time, and we're trying to decide whether or not to make the jump to the 2024 rule set. If you, like me, want to know what changes have been made and if you should make the switch, then this series is for you. In this series, we're going to explore the main classes, subclasses, and core rules. I'll try to provide one-to-one comparisons whenever possible, but as a disclaimer, I will also share my own opinions as to the design and content. Today, we're going to look at the Sorcerer class. So here is a key for you. We have green. If you see something highlighted green, it's an added feature. Yellow is a changed mechanic, and red it has either been removed or it's been moved to a different level. So here are the core features or traits of the Sorcerer. As you can see, not much has changed. You still have a d6 hit die. You are squishy. Your saving throw proficiencies are still Constitution and Charisma. And for skills, you still get choice of 2, and they're the same skills. Weapon proficiency has changed. Whereas in 5e, you had proficiency with daggers, darts, slings, quarterstaffs, and light crossbows. Now in 2024, you get all simple weapons. That gives you a little bit more options of things that you can swing around. Still, as a sorcerer, you don't get any armor proficiency, and you don't get any tool proficiencies. The only other change between 5th edition and 2024, as far as the core features and traits goes, is how you equip your character. In 2024, it's simplified, so you either get to choose A, which is a spear, 2 daggers, arcane focus, Dungeoneer's pack, and 28 gold pieces. Or if you want to kit out your sorcerer and go to the shop, it's 50 gold pieces. So the number of cantrips known is the same in 2024 as it was in 5e. Also, the number of spell slots per spell level has stayed the same from both editions. And proficiency bonus also stays the same. And the number of sorcery points per level has also stayed the same between the two editions. So let's now look at the features table. So you'll see that we have the level, then 5e features, 2024 features, and then one of the other changes is spells known versus spells prepared. And you'll see that in 2024, when we get into spell casting, you actually have access to more spells. So in 5e, you had spell casting and your sorceress origin. For some reason, in 5th edition, you got your subclass at 1st level. This is no longer the case in 2024. You get your sorcerer subclass at 3rd level, which is in keeping with the rest of the design. But you still get spell casting, and there is a yellow marker, meaning that something has changed as far as mechanics goes. And you get a new ability called Innate Sorcery that has a buff alert. At 2nd level, you still get Font of Magic, but that has changed slightly as far as mechanic-wise. And you actually get your meta magic feats, your meta magic options earlier than you do in 5th edition. Whereas in 5th edition, you got it in 3rd level. 2024, you get it at 2nd level. But it also has a buff/nerf alert. So it has both. At 3rd level, 2024, you get your subclass. Ability score improvement stays the same. At 5th level, for 5th edition, you got nothing, but in 2024, you get Sorceress Restoration, which was the capstone feature at the level 20 feature in 5th edition. Although, even though they moved it down to 5th level, it's been changed, and I think that change is better. Moving on, at level 6, for both editions, you get your subclass feature. At level 7, you got nothing in 5e, but in 2024, you get a new ability called Sorcery Incarnate, which also features a buff alert. And then not much changes between levels 8 and levels 18. You'll see that the only thing that's changed is the number of spells known or a number of spells that you can prepare. And then we get to level 19. This is a running theme with 2024 as they do away with the ability score improvement at level 19, and instead you get an epic boon. And then again, the other change is Sorceress Restoration is no longer a thing at level 20 for 5e. It's Arcane Apotheosis. And I apologize, that should be highlighted in green because that is a new ability. Alright, so let's talk about spellcasting and how spellcasting has changed. Again, like I said, the cantrips that you know has stayed the same. It scales with the level. The only change is that in 2024, whenever you gain a sorcerer level, you can swap out one cantrip you know with another one on the sorcerer spell list. This gives your sorcerer a little bit more flexibility and doesn't, stick them with cantrips that you end up not using. Spell slots are the same. And 5e, you had a set number of sorcerer spells that you knew, and then you could replace one of those spells that you knew whenever you gained a level in the gained a sorcerer level. The only change is between 5e and 2024 is that the number of spells that you know or you can prepare are greater. You still have that ability to replace one spell with another one from the list when you level, and again, as long as you have a level for which you have spell slots. Charisma is still your spellcasting ability modifier. The only change is in 2024, they don't include the formula for save DC and spell attack bonus. I think that comes later on in the spellcasting rules chapter. And in both editions, you can use an arcane focus as a focus for your sorcerer spells. I do want to do one apology. In previous versions of class comparison videos, I said that ritual casting looked like it was removed, but it was something I wanted to check into. I have now checked into that. Ritual casting has not been removed. It still exists in the 2024 edition. So if we make a video talking about spellcasting, we can talk a little bit more about that. All right, level 1, Sorceress Origin. Like I said, that was your subclass. That's no longer in 5e. You can now get this at 3rd level. This streamlines the design across all classes, so that way it's more consistent. You know that if you are, if at your character class, you're at 3rd level, you're going to get your subclass. It makes sense for all the classes to be like that. All right, let's talk about the first buff alert, which was level 1, new feature added at 2024 called Innate Sorcery. Basically, it says an event in your past left an indelible mark on you, infusing you with simmering magic. As a bonus action, you can unleash that magic for 1 minute, during which you gain the following benefits. The spell save DC of your sorcerer spells increases by 1. You have advantage on attack rolls of sorcerer spells you cast. And you can use this feature twice, and you regain all expended uses of it when you finish a long rest. This is an incredibly powerful ability, especially for 1st level, and you can use it twice between long rests. It is a strong bonus action power-up, and it only gets stronger as you go up in level. They add on to it. So definitely a big boost for a 1st level sorcerer. All right, let's talk about the level 2 feature called Font of Magic. Basically, you get sorcery points. This is where they introduce sorcery points. You start with 2. You gain more as you gain levels in the class, and you regain all expended points after a long rest. You can use these sorcery points to fuel options and metamagic features, which you get later on in 5th edition. So the 2 features they give you are to convert your spell slots to sorcery points, and then to use your sorcery points to convert back into spell slots. Now in 5th edition, it was a bonus action to expend a spell slot and gain a number of sorcery points equal to the slot's level. The change in 2024 is that you can expend a spell slot and get sorcery points from it equal to the slot's level with no action required. So they changed it from bonus action to no action. In 5th edition, you could create a spell slot using your sorcery points. And then there was a spell slot level and then the costs associated with it. So if you wanted to create a spell slot level for level 1, you'd expend 2 sorcery points. And this was a bonus action. Now in 2024, it's still a bonus action, and it's still, a max of level 5. You can't go beyond a level 5 spell slot. And the sorcery point cost is still the same, but they just added a minimum sorcerer level requirement. So that's the only change. It doesn't really affect the gameplay too much, but I will say that it is a really nice benefit to have converting spell slots to sorcery points without requiring an action. So that being a freebie is a big boon to sorcerers. All right, we're coming along to Meta Magic, which has the buff alert, we're going to compare levels 2 through 17. So in 5th edition, you didn't get your Meta Magic until 3rd level, but you got your sorcery points at 2nd level, but not the Meta Magic. So you didn't really have many options other than conversion, right, at a 2nd level. So it makes sense that in 2024, as soon as you get your sorcery points, you can use Meta Magic options, okay? So let's compare the wording a little bit. So in 5e, when you get Meta Magic, you get 2 options, and it says you can only use 1 Meta Magic option on a spell when you cast it unless otherwise noted. That's the same in 2024, right? You get 2 options, and you must spend the number of sorcery points that those options cost, and you can only use 1 Meta Magic option on a spell when you cast it unless it's noted in the options. Now here's where the change happens. So you get more Meta Magic at level 10 and level 17. In 5th edition, for each level, level 10 and level 17, you just got 1 additional option. In 2024, you get 2 additional options at level 10 and 2 additional at level 17. So that's the buff. They're giving you more Meta Magic options. So in 5th edition, right, you had a total of 4. You got up to a total of 4. In 2024, you got up to a total of 6. And in 5th edition, once you learned those Meta Magic options, you are stuck with them. In 2024 edition, you can actually change out your Meta Magic options, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Anytime you gain a level in Sorcerer, you can change out. So let's talk about the Meta Magic options, because there's a lot of them. And in 2024, they added more, and they also changed some of the mechanics. So we'll talk about that right now, starting with Careful Spell. So Careful Spell, when you cast a spell that forces other creatures to make a saving throw, you can protect some of those creatures from the spell's full force. You spend a sorcery point and choose a number of creatures up to your charisma modifier, again a minimum of 1, and then that chosen creature automatically succeeds on its saving throw against the spell. They made a change in 2024, basically saying, all those things, but if they take no damage, if they would normally take half damage on a successful save. So in 5th edition, that's great that you're giving someone automatically succeeding on your saving throw, but usually how spells work is, especially for splash damage, you succeed and you take half damage. So even though you're shaping the spell around your ally and they succeed, they're still taking half damage. So you're not really... it's a careful spell, but it's not that careful. 2024 rebalances it and says, hey, you're shaping this spell around your allies. They save on the spell and they take no damage, which is a really good change to Careful Spell. Distance Spell has stayed the same. Basically, when you cast a spell that has a range of 5 feet or greater, you can expend 1 sorcery point to double the range of that spell. And if you cast a spell that has a range of touch, you can expend a sorcery point to make the range of the spell 30 feet. Empowered Spell has stayed the same. When you roll damage for a spell, you can expend a sorcery point to reroll a number of the damage dice up to your charisma modifier. And you must use the new rolls, and you can also use Empowered Spell even if you have already used a different meta magic option during the casting of the spell. So this is one of the stacking ones. Extended Spell in 5e. When you cast a spell that has a duration of a minute or longer, you can spend a sorcery point to double its duration to a maximum of 24 hours. That mechanic still exists in 2024, but they added an additional feature that if the affected spell requires concentration, then you have advantage on any saving throw you make to maintain that concentration. So you're holding a spell for longer. It's nice that you have advantage on that concentration. That's a good addition. Heightened Spell. This has changed somewhat. Mainly the cost and the saving throws. So we'll talk about that in a second. In 5th edition, when you cast a spell that forces a creature to make a saving throw to resist its effects, you can spend 3 sorcery points to give one target of the spell disadvantage on its first saving throw made against the spell. There are some spells that you cast that they have to keep making a saving throw, or if they're under effect, they make a saving throw again at the end of their turn, right? So it's not that heightened of a spell because, they have disadvantage on just the first saving throw. In 2024, they rectify this. Not only they make it actually cheaper to use this ability, this meta magic option. Instead of costing 3, it costs 2 now, 2 sorcery points. And then you give one target disadvantage on saves against the spell. It doesn't specify the first. It says saves, plural, meaning any saves related to that spell. So if they have to keep making, concurrent saves, they got disadvantage on all of them. So that's another powerful boost to Heightened Spell. Then we get to Quickened Spell, which in 5e states that when you cast a spell that has a casting time of 1 action, you can spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time to a bonus action for this casting. Now, Quickened Spell could have been definitely abused in 5e because you could cast a spell, a high-level spell, as your main action, spend 2 sorcery points, and cast another high-level spell as a bonus action. What the 2024 version does is nerf it, rebalance it, take away that overpoweredness of it. So basically it says you can't modify a spell in this way if you've already cast a level 1+ spell on the current turn, nor can you cast a level 1+ spell on this turn after modifying a spell in this way. So basically, you can cast one, large spell as a bonus action, but you're not going to get away with doing more than one that's above first level. So it's definitely a needed rebalance. It is a nerf, but it's a needed nerf. All right, now on to Subtle Spell. Subtle Spell in 5e, when you cast a spell, you can spend 1 sorcery point to cast it without any somatic or verbal components. So, you're trying to be sneaky and cast Fireball, but you're still pulling out that, bat guano, I think is what is used. So it's like, hey, that's not very subtle. I see you shifting over there in your component pouch. So in 2024, they make it better. They say when you cast a spell, you can spend 1 sorcery point to cast it without any verbal, somatic, now material components are added. So no more shifting for that bat guano. The only exception is it doesn't apply to spells that have material components that are consumed by the spell or that have a cost specified in the spell. That makes sense. But if you want to cast Fireball on the DL and no one knows you're going to do it, that's what Subtlest Spell is for. Because you're no longer waggling your fingers, you're no longer saying a chant, and you're no longer digging through your component pouch to find that bat guano. And that makes your Subtlest Spell very hard to counter because no one knows you're countering it until it's too late. I mean, no one knows that you're casting it until it's too late. All right, so now we're going to Twin Spell, which the 5th edition version says when you cast a spell that targets only one creature and doesn't have a range of self, you can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with the same spell, and cantrips count as one sorcery point. To be eligible, a spell must be incapable of targeting more than one creature at the spell's current level. For example, Magic Missile and Scorching Ray aren't eligible, but Ray of Frost and Chromatic Orb are. Twin Spell in 2024 got a big nerf alert. They take away a lot of the flavor of what made Twin Spell in 5e cool. Split an Ray of Frost in 2 people. Basically, the change is now when you cast a spell, such as Charm Person, that can be cast with a higher level spell slot to target an additional creature, you can spend 1 sorcery point to increase the spell's effective level by 1. So this gets rid of any type of spell that you can do. You can scale damage with burning a higher spell slot. This limits you to spells that higher spell slots target additional creatures, which is kind of lame. Twin Spell, I don't like the change. They added 2 new solid options in 2024, though. One is called Seeking Spell. If you make an attack roll for a spell and miss, you can spend a sorcery point to reroll the d20, and you must use the new roll. You can use Seeking Spell even if you've already used a different metamagic option during the casting of the spell. And they've also added Transmuted Spell. When you cast a spell that deals a type of damage from the following list, you can spend 1 sorcery point to change that damage type to one of the other listed types: Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, Poison, or Thunder. Those are both solid metamagic options that add to the flexibility of the Sorcerer. So in 2024, you get access to metamagic options as soon as you get your sorcery points. This makes sense from a design standpoint. In 5e, you had to wait a level to have access to the metamagic options, limiting what you could do with your 2 sorcery points when you got them to spell slot conversion only. In 2024, you have the added benefit of being able to swap out a metamagic option whenever you gain a level in Sorcerer. In 5e, like I said, you got a total of 4 metamagic options that you couldn't change. In 2024, you get a total of 6 metamagic options you can at least swap out once per level. This greatly improves the flexibility of the Sorcerer class. Most metamagic options remain the same with some minor rebalancing or improvements. 2024 also added 2 more solid metamagic options. My biggest gripe is the change to the Twin Spell. They removed the coolness of it. It's kind of lame now. And the only benefit is essentially affecting another creature without expending the spell slot to do it. However, this completely eliminates spells that scale damage with higher levels expended. It limits the spells you can twin to spells that, when cast at higher levels, affect additional creatures. All right, now we're on to the subclasses, which was called Sorceress Origin in 5e, and now Sorceress subclass in 2020-24. In 5e, you got choice of 2, Draconic Bloodline or Wild Magic. Those still exist in 2024, but they've added some other subclasses from other 5e supplemental materials. Now you have access to Aberrant Sorcery and Clockwork Sorcery. All right, let's talk about Sorceress Restoration, which was your level 20 capstone in 5e that you get now at level 5, but the mechanic has changed. So in 5th edition, at 20th level, you regained 4 expended sorcery points whenever you finish a short rest. In 2024, they changed it that when you finish a short rest, you can regain expended sorcery points, but no more than a number equal to half your sorcerer level rounded down. And once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. It makes sense the 2024 version included Sorceress Restoration at an earlier level. It was a weak ability for a level 20 in 5e. And in 2024, you can regain sorcery points earlier, which is very useful, and it scales with your level. This is a much better design and befits a level 5 ability. However, you are limited to one use of this feature per long rest. And in 5e, the 4 sorcery points recovered is measly, and you have to do a lot of short rests to gain maximum benefit, which your party probably wouldn't stand for anyways. You can't go, well, let me just keep on short resting to get, some more sorcery points back. All right, let's move on to level 7, Sorcery Incarnate. It's a new ability in the 2024 edition, and it's got a buff alert. So, if you have no uses of innate sorcery left, remember that was the double power-up where it gives you the +1 to your spell save DC and advantage on sorcery spells cast within the minute that ability is active. So if you have no uses of that left, you can use it if you spend 2 sorcery points when you take the bonus action to activate it. In addition, while your innate sorcery feature is active, you can use up to 2 of your meta magic options on each spell you cast. So there were only 2 meta magic options where you could stack. Now, when your innate sorcery is active, as long as you pay the cost, stack them up to 2. Choose whichever one you want to do. This is a powerful ability. It seems a little broken. On top of using sorcery points to gain back the spent use of innate sorcery, you get the boost to spell save DC, advantage on attack rolls, and double stack meta magic options on the spells you cast during this minute. And even, it works even when you don't need to spend the 2 sorcery points. Let's say you still have your 2 uses of innate sorcery. You use it at level 7 now, and you get all these benefits. I imagine the only thing that keeps this from being broken is that to fully utilize this feature, you can burn through a lot of sorcery points quickly. The only way that this would be broken is if you don't use up as many sorcery points for this feature. That's a little foreshadowing, by the way. All right, moving on. Level 19. The ability score improvement in 5e has been removed and is replaced with the Epic Boon. This is a design feature consistent across the 2024 edition. All right, that foreshadowing I was talking about? Here it comes into play with the level 20 ability for 2024 called Arcane Apotheosis. And this is a buff alert. So, while your innate sorcery feature is active, that one that boosts your spell save DC, gives you an advantage, lets you double up meta magic feats, right? While your innate sorcery feature is active, you can use 1 meta magic option of each of your turns without spending sorcery points on it. So I take back what I said moments ago about this feature burning through sorcery points, keeping it from being broken. Now it's broken, which is great for a level 20 feature, but like I said, it seems broken. The changes to the Sorcerer from 5e to 2024 edition seem to allow for more spellcasting flexibility, and they seem to be aligning when you get your subclass to be the same as other classes. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the meh. And with the new Sorcerer redesign, there's a lot of good, not much bad. And I am always going to keep the Epic Boon as a meh, as I've talked about in the other class comparison videos. So, the good, here we go. Innate Sorcery, that's that instant power-up with 2 benefits. The Meta Magic gives you more options that you aren't stuck with. I like the Fix to Careful spell because it allows you to really not hit your allies. And the Quicken Spell Fix, it is a nerf, but it's to prevent that OP casting. Sorcerer's Restoration, getting back those sorcery points. You get it earlier, and it's better, and it scales. Sorcery Incarnate, let's take that innate sorcery and boost it, make it more powerful now by stacking meta magic options. And then Arcane Apotheosis, let's take that innate sorcery, make it even more powerful by getting rid of, one of those meta magic options, sorcery point costs. All right, here's the bad. I think they messed up with Twin Spell. That meta magic feat, it was so cool when you could just split a spell in 2 and hit 2 different targets. Now it's just like you can affect another creature. It's kind of lame. And here's the meh epic boon. So in 2024, the Sorcerer gets more spells, more meta magic options that they can change, easy access to power-ups, and meta magic stacking with limited cost while they're in their super mode. Tell me how that isn't broken. Well, that's it for the Sorcerer class comparison between 5e and 2024. If you liked this video or found it useful in any way, please give it a like, leave a comment, or share, and subscribe to this channel for more videos. Once again, thank you for watching.